The United States imposed sanctions on Iranian officials accused of repressing protests against the government. Among those sanctioned is the Secretary of Iran's Supreme Council for National Security, Ali Larijani. Washington accused him of coordinating the crackdown and calling for force against protesters. 4 regional commanders in Iran's law enforcement forces and Revolutionary Guard were also sanctioned for their roles in the crackdown. The U.S. additionally sanctioned several financial networks that are accused of laundering proceeds from Iranian oil sales. These networks funnel billions of dollars annually as Iranian citizens face economic hardship. The announcement comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump said that plans for executions in Iran have stopped. According to Norway-based NGO Iran Human Rights, the security force crackdown on demonstrations has killed almost 3,500 people. Iranian authorities insist that a man arrested during protests in the country is not facing charges that risk the death penalty, despite fears that that may be the case. The 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, who was arrested last week, is facing charges of propaganda against Iran's Islamic system and acting against national security. Iran's judiciary said his punishment, according to the law, will be imprisonment, adding that the death penalty does not exist for the charges he is facing. The announcement contradicted earlier reports that Soltani would be executed. A human rights organization had reported that judicial authorities informed Soltani's family 4 days after his arrest that a death sentence had been issued and confirmed. Authorities had also ordered the family to visit the prison where Soltani was held to meet him, raising concerns this would be a final meeting before execution.
European military personnel began arriving in Greenland on Thursday just hours after meetings between U.S., Danish, and Greenlandic officials in Washington. The meeting failed to resolve what Denmark's foreign minister called fundamental disagreements over the mineral-rich Arctic nation. France, Sweden, Germany, and Norway announced on Wednesday that they would deploy military personnel as part of a reconnaissance mission to Greenland's capital, Nuuk. Germany's defense ministry said in a statement that the mission aims to, quote, explore options for security in light of Russian and Chinese threats in the Arctic. The ministry noted that a team comprised of 13 Bundeswehr members were sent to Nuuk from Thursday until Sunday at Denmark's invitation. French President Emmanuel Macron said Paris would deploy more land, sea, and air forces to join military exercises. The heightened military presence comes as U.S. President Donald Trump remains insistent on taking over Greenland, citing U.S. national security concerns. The threats gained weight following Washington's stunning military operation in Venezuela, which toppled and captured President Nicolas Maduro on the 3rd of January. Denmark's top diplomat said the meeting indicated that Trump still clearly wishes to, quote, conquer Greenland, and stressed that a U.S. takeover of the Danish territory was absolutely not necessary.
"2026 will be a year of challenges for national defense," French President Emmanuel Macron told armed forces on Thursday. Russia's war in Ukraine is ongoing. Tensions are escalating amid violent protests in Iran, and a new source of concern has emerged with US President Donald Trump expressing an interest in taking over Greenland, an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark.
L'accélération des périls commande d'accélérer le réarmement de la France. Pour rester libre, il faut être craint. Pour être craint, il faut être puissant. Et pour être puissant dans ce monde si brutal, il faut faire plus vite et faire plus fort. Cela suppose que la nation consente à des efforts à la mesure de notre rude époque.
Macron outlined 3 strategic priorities: increasing ammunition stockpiles, strengthening operational readiness, and safeguarding France's sovereignty. On the financial front, Macron confirmed his intention to significantly increase military funding, calling for a €36 billion rise over the 2026-2030 period. Macron also announced that France would strengthen its military presence in Greenland, Around 15 French soldiers are already deployed in the capital Nuuk for exercises, with a contingent set to be reinforced in the coming days with land, air and naval assets.
The European Parliament should not derail the ratification of the EU-US trade deal to punish Trump over US threats to acquire Greenland. In a nutshell, this is what David McAllister, the influential chair of the European Parliament's Committee on Foreign Affairs, told flagship Euronews morning show Europe Today.
I personally believe that the EPP line is that we should separate the two issues. We need to finalize the US trade talks because our companies need predictability, they need stability.
The European Parliament must ratify the agreement reached by Donald Trump and the Commission's President Ursula von der Leyen last August in Scotland, which tripled tariffs on EU products while reducing to zero industrial goods coming from the US. The US is pushing to have the full ratification of the agreement in place, but several MEPs are considering blocking the approval process to protest against Trump's ownership demands on the Danish territory. The German European People's Party MEP said there are different views within the political groups of the European Parliament.
We need to find majorities, and in the moment, I think the EPP and the European Conservatives are for moving forward, whereas the Socialists, the Liberals and Greens perhaps want to postpone the vote.
On Wednesday, the Parliament issued a joint statement from the leaders of the political groups expressing their support for Greenland and Denmark.
The leader of the UK's opposition Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, said on Thursday she had sacked the party's justice person Robert Jenrick for apparently plotting to defect to the hard-right Reform UK. Badenoch also ejected Jenrick from the party's ranks in Parliament and suspended his party membership. She said in a video statement that there was evidence of Jenrick's planned defection in a way that was designed to be as damaging as possible to the party. Though Badenoch did not specify which party Jenrick was planning to switch to, Nigel Farage, a leader of the Reform Party, said he had had conversations with him. In the past 12 months, the Conservatives have suffered a string of defections to Reform UK, including some former cabinet ministers, most recently former Tory Chancellor of the Exchequer Nadhim Zahawi. The upstart anti-immigration party is expected to make major breakthroughs in upcoming elections this year, including those in Scotland and Wales.
Germany's troubled economy returned to modest growth last year after 2 years of falling output. The expansion in gross domestic product of 0.2% for 2025 was fueled by stronger consumer and government spending to make up for years of underinvestment. On the other hand, exports sagged under the weight of more restrictive US trade policy under President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, defense spending is rising due to a perceived higher level of threat from Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. Germany has endured a period of extended stagnation following the COVID-19 pandemic. Higher energy costs following the war in Ukraine and increasing competition from China in key German specialties such as cars and industrial machinery have held back an economy that is heavily focused on exports. A stronger euro has also made exports less competitive on price.
Chaos unfolded in the streets of Minneapolis on Wednesday night after a federal immigration officer shot a man in the leg during an enforcement operation. The shooting sparked clashes between federal officers and protesters calling on ICE to leave the city. ICE agents wearing gas masks fired tear gas while some protesters threw rocks and shot fireworks. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said the agent fired defensively after being attacked by two people with a shovel and a broom handle as he attempted to detain a man accused of being in the country illegally.
We have ICE agents throughout our city and throughout our state who, along with Border Control, are creating chaos. It's certainly not creating safety when a huge percentage of the shootings that have taken place so far this year in Minneapolis have been by ICE. So let's be very clear. I've seen conduct from ICE that is disgusting and is intolerable.
It was the second ICE-related shooting in the city in just over a week, with tensions rising since the fatal shooting of Renee Good on the 7th of January, amid a major immigration crackdown that has seen thousands of ICE officers sent to Minnesota's largest city. Governor Tim Walz has accused the federal government of conducting a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security says ICE agents have made more than 2,000 arrests in Minnesota since early December and has vowed to continue operations.
Splashdown of Crew 11. After 167 days in space, Dragon and NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fink, Kim Yayoi of JAXA, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov are back on Earth.